And here we go. All right, so let me get rid of this pop-up. On the agenda, we have no new clients this month to report. Hopefully we'll get a few more in the next month or two. So the work items completed went into the release notes were posted to the IMS main menu page on the 1st of the month. They expired on the 12th. If anyone needs them updated or wants to review them, let me know. I can go ahead and reactivate those for you. The next part is the current release items that we have. You can see the ones that we have slated to be in this release for this month. I'll let you look at those at your convenience. And that brings us to the discussion items. So the food form, the FDA food form, nothing has changed with that. What we have done with the new mobile app, though, is continue working on the on-site wastewater forms. I got an update this morning with one of my developers, and we were at the point where the application has been built and it's going to go into dev testing either later on today or first thing in the morning. He feels pretty confident that's going to happen. Once that's done, all the other forms should go pretty quickly. So we're pushing that out also. So that's discussion item B. So for the public application and payment portal, last week we had an internal meeting and a demonstration of this two-factor portal login that we have. We're basically continuing to do the research and design of how we want it to look. We've got a lot of good ideas. It should streamline everything, so if you're going to use any kind of application on your phone or something like that, it's going to be very user-friendly. It's going to be very quick and efficient. So yeah, we're going to continue to work on that. We have weekly meetings set up to discuss that. And that brings us to C. Okay, so when we were talking, I was talking with a couple developers last week, excuse me. In the mobile app, we have this ready to go. As far as the background color changing, it's going to be a slightly like light red or rosish color. That should be available at the end of the release. I know it's in QA at this point. So I don't believe that we're going to do anything with the My Forms version, which is what that little screenshot is that you see right here. Not just yet. So then that brings us to D. Having the P, PF, and C comment boxes. That is a development item. I believe we have that set up for 119.773, yeah. And that is that development effort is supposed to be done by the end of this release, the end of the month in a couple weeks. And here we go with that. This one comes off. It was completed. Go ahead and remove that one. And then we're going to go to action item F. Tony, if you're there, if you're on the call, I don't see you on the call. I've reached out to, just in case you watch the recording, I have reached out to our partner company. They have continued to work with Microsoft, and we have not found a fix for it. No solution was offered by them. They said they're going to continue researching. If they find something, I'll let you know. And let's see, the Egyptian County, Carrie, if you're there. Okay, so the issue that you guys were having or not issues, but the request for a pop-up confirming a successful download or upload of a session. When I discussed this with our partner company, at the same time I was discussing the item F, they did not have that on their long-term or short-term planning. That's something that they're aware of. It's just not on their current list of things that they want to push out. we really don't have any control. All we can do is give suggestions at this point. We can look internally to see what we can do. I don't know that there's too much we can, since that's their own proprietary coding inside the client. We can control the forms. We just can't control the function of the server. And it's, without them giving us some kind of concession to access the code. But I doubt they're going to do that. So that brings us to H. This is adding the expanded numbers for the water samples, and that is slated to be released in August. I know we discussed that this past week also, or I'm sorry, last week. The request complaint records to be able to be tied to a property and an establishment. This was released at the beginning of the month. If anyone has any questions on that one, let me know. I can push those release notes back out.
Yes, can you please do that?
Yep, let me make a note of that. At the end of this, I'll go ahead and push that out. Release notes. All right.
Thank you.
No problem. And John was going to be on this call today, so if there's a question, or if you guys have a question that I can't answer, I'll just have to get with him to get it answered. We had someone at CDP's whose mother had passed away, and they're at a funeral for that. They're at her funeral today, so it'll be tomorrow before I can get a hold of him. So we are on J. Request complaint records. Nope, I'm sorry, we already did that one. Request was made to add letters to the certification module. What types of letters? This is where one of my developers had questions. Give me 1 second to look to see what he's asked me to ask. So he wants to say, would you guys ever want a batch run on the reporting section? For example, would you guys want letters to be sent out for all certifications that have expired within user entered date range? That's the question that he has, so that before he can go any further with this. Do you guys have any guidance for him?
This is Carrie. I wasn't on our last call, so I'm not exactly sure what this is in regards to, but I would say anytime that we could have a date range to use, that would be beneficial.
Okay. I guess he was asking for, he wants to know if it's going to be a batch run on the reporting, like batch everything together, or do you want it individually, these certifications? Or these complaints?
Trevor, are we talking about the Certified Food Manager certification?
Right. That's what I understand it to be, yes. The problem is I wasn't on a couple of these last CCB calls, so I'm a little lost on exactly what, but Tim, one of my developers, did reach out to me and said he need to know this information. So I can actually circle back around to this one in an email if I need to. Just make a note of that. Okay. Yeah, I'll get back to that one. There's going to probably be one more I'm going to need some advice on from him in here. I may be able to get John to help out on that one, though, also. Okay, action item K, request was made from Madison County, more user-friendly interface on phones and handheld devices, excuse me. So that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. When we were creating the portal, the portal for making payments and things like that, public portal, we also kind of are going to tie in what we've learned there to this right here. So this new development platform that we're looking at, it's basically called Razor, and that would allow for a very streamlined and very user-friendly interface for logging into IMS or anything like that. So this would be developed at the same time as the public portal. So hopefully that'll help out when you guys are using your phones. You know, if you're going to look up like establishment history or data or something like that. Okay, that brings us to L, which is the request for a report establishments that have never had a routine inspection. This one is in production, and I believe it actually passed QA yesterday. So this should be released at the end of the month. And the next one, M, we need a new flag number. We need a new flag for the number of days the first routine after opening license inspection must be completed. This one, I believe I also saw was completed with QA, and it should be done at the end of this month, or it should be released at the end of the month on our normal planning release. And then that brings us to N, alert with print flags and on the comments. Part of this was done in the IMS section. I'm sorry, in the IMS section. Part of this was done in the new My Apps version of this. We're not going to do some of these pieces just yet. We want to focus on getting the on-site stuff completed first and out for everybody to use for the My Apps. We are going to continue to work on this later on. I think we were talking about September 1st, circling back around to that one. But it will not be in the current release. There was one more item that I needed a comment on. And give me 1 second to look that up. When it comes to permitting, we're basically going to be doing a report for you guys, and one of the reports needed to know an opening date. So one of the questions that some of the developers had was, when do you guys define an opening date? Is it consistent with all counties, or is it county specific? So is the opening date the day you give them the permit, or is the opening date maybe a future date after the permit is issued? How do you guys work that out? Be interested to hear some thoughts on this.
Trevor, this is Alan at Sangamon County. A lot of times the opening date is really determined by the facility, because the way we work it, and maybe other people work it a little different, is we will do a final pre-operational inspection, and and then the establishment will tell us what their start date's going to be, and that start date is their opening date.
Okay, so...
And sometimes it's the day we do the final inspection, and sometimes it's a couple weeks later after they've trained some folks.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's kind of how we do it.
Is that consistent with anybody else?
Well, Alan, based on that, then there's no way for CDP to track that. Based on your explanation, how you guys handled it, I guess in my mind, I would consider from a technical standpoint, wouldn't anyone's opening date be the date we issue the initial permit for?
Well, yeah, I mean, but
I would say no, because sometimes those dates get entered in there when they put them in the computer, and I think the final inspection would be more likely to be more accurate, at least on my perspective.
Let me pull up.
Trevor, this time
Why would you be issuing the permit before the final inspection?
You don't technically issue it, but sometimes the dates get there somehow when it's created in CDP.
Well, then that's a data entry error. Well, I guess the answer is we all do it different.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. Let me look on the permit real quick to see if we have an opening.
I mean,
I mean, Gary, I agree with you on that's what the date should be, but that date should be the same date as the date on the permit in my mind.
Typically, yes, I would agree with that.
And Will, what I was going to say was, when they tell us when we're going to start, that's our start date that we put in CDP, and that.
I wasn't trying to say you guys are doing something wrong. I understand what you're saying. We run into that also. I just meant it from the standpoint of from CDP purposes of tracking. There's just no way they can track it based off of that scenario of a place planning to open 2 weeks after we would do our final inspection or initial inspection.
Well, I mean, we would start the clock, like from their start date on their permit,
Right. So in all reality, I guess what the question would be for purposes of CDP doing this, could we all come to an agreement that we either use the permit date or whatever we call that final inspection or something like that as the opening date for someplace new? One of the two dates? That way we all are giving them the same information?
What is this?
Yeah, we will fix we will change our process if it works better a certain way. I mean, I'm not married to anything, just so long as we get a report that works.
What exactly is this report that we're discussing?
Give me 1 second. I know.
Will it affect any reports that I already currently have that I've worked to get the way we need them right now?
I want to say it is 9B.
I would prefer that Peoria's be left alone, because ours is based off the final inspection date or the last routine if it's not a new establishment.
Okay.
Is this is this II?
This is II, yes. So this would be report 10 based off of report 9B, which is Peoria's, I believe.
Okay.
Would it help if we had just, and I'm going to use North Carolina as an example since I'm more familiar with them. North Carolina's permits, they actually have an opening date. They have a permit date, they have an opening date, and the opening date is considered the day that, so they may get permitted on the 1st of the month, but they're not going to open until the 15th. So they will put both of those dates in there. That's how we run reports for them. For some reason, that was never brought into these forms. Is that something that, not just forms, but even on the IMS side, is that something that would that work for everybody? An optional field called opening date, just in case it's not the same as the permit date? Would that be a better solution, I guess?
So, Trevor, this is Tom Anderson with McLean County. As you've already heard, every county does it differently.
Yeah.
In McLean County, we do what we call an opening inspection for the establishment. At the end of that opening inspection, if everything is in compliance, that establishment could open at the end of that inspection. They won't physically have a permit at that time because we have to go back to the office and get that all prepared, go through the paperwork, get the files through, and then the permit is mailed off to them. We don't have a start date on our permit. Our permit is issued for the year, and then it expires on December 31st of that year.
Gotcha.
So what triggers an opening for an establishment is that opening inspection that we perform. So they can actually open as long as the opening inspection allows them. Minutes after we're completed that opening inspection, or they could remain closed for a few months and go through their training. And basically that opening inspection allows them to bring food in so that they can train their staff, they can do their soft opening.
Right.
The permit is just a physical representation, a physical symbol that they have been permitted and they are inspected. We don't have a start date on it.
Okay.
So Knox does it very much like McLean and Peoria. When we do, whether you want to call it your final or your initial inspection, they are permitted, if they do everything goes well and they pass that inspection, they are permitted to open at that date. Which that's what we would want to base our first routine off of, is that date of inspection. Even if they decided to wait 2 weeks to open.
That was my next question, Will, actually, is when would that trigger the next inspections? Yeah.
Just technically, when you do that final inspection, you give them permission to open and operate. If they are only doing training and whatnot, if they're still doing food preparation, they still need that license. So operational, but maybe not open to the public.
Right. So if I go back, then that would probably be the permit issued on. Then is what we're looking at, regardless. That would be what he would have to go off of, not the actual signature date. Okay. Issued on. Is everyone okay with that?
Is that field mandatory then?
It's not required. That's the other part. It's not, since it's not required, then, if you don't fill it out, it would probably default to the signature date if that is there, because that pre-populates. At least it does for the mobile side of things.
So, and you're using the risk assessment form, not the inspection?
No, this is the application. Sorry.
This is Lisa. What if everybody doesn't use the application on your site? Then the date's not going to work anyway.
Right. I don't think we use this form. I'm not familiar with this form at all.
What's funny is that's our department. We don't use that form.
Oh, I happen
We
to
have our own form.
Yeah, for this right here, this is all dynamically driven. I just happen to have your database open because I was working with an e-tool with your county yesterday.
Yeah, that's fine. I knew it was in there, but we don't use it. We have a different form.
Okay. So when you guys have, so I take it what you guys do, it sounds like at McLean, you'll have a paper form that you'll give them and they fill it out. Then you go into the IMS and then enter that data again.
Yes.
Okay.
There's typically a plan review process, and there's a larger application that goes with it.
Okay. That's wrong. I just want to look at something real quick. Yeah, issue permit, payment date. Okay, yeah, opening, close. Yeah, none of those are required. Do you guys fill these out, or I'm sorry, like the opening date right here? Do you guys use this one at all when you're entering your actual the application into the web system? Then
Winnebago isn't filling that out. Unfortunately, you can put a date there, but it's usually not accurate.
right.
The operator might be shorter or longer getting open than what we intend.
Gotcha.
I'd say that might be helpful for like seasonal places, but not necessarily for a newly opening establishment.
Right. I can see that. Okay, so
Everybody
Trevor,
wants to open yes.
go ahead.
Hey, Trevor, this is Tim. I want to let you know I'm on the call now.
Okay, so Tim, we're having a issue regarding the 9B as far as what they consider the opening date. It's all across the board. Every county does things different. It's not a required field on either mobile or an IMS. So it sounds like some counties don't even use that field, and other counties, they all just seem to do it differently. So I'm not sure how Report 10 is going to populate with the data.
Well, everyone uses a setup date when they create the establishment. I mean, we can use that.
Well,
They could set up and then they might not open for a couple months.
yeah, that's
If they so they can set them up and not use it for a couple of months.
yeah. So
not
basically,
open.
like they could go out there and permit some place today, but then they may not open for 2 months, is what they're saying.
No, isn't the setup date the date you create that establishment?
Yes.
Correct.
So they might submit paperwork today for a new establishment that might take them 3 months to go through the process and get final approval.
I mean, we can skip the opening date.
Does everybody do like the status that they would be like when they have a new establishment, it starts in pending and then they have to change it to active?
That I do not know. Scroll up, Trevor, see what's there should be like a permit status, and then
Yeah.
permit number status. So what was in the permit number status? That dropped down again. On hold printed. I think that's different for everybody, isn't it? Or
Yeah, go to the section above that where it says status.
yeah, I mean, you can go off of that, but that doesn't.
I didn't know if everybody used that function or feature.
I think Clayton County does. We have some hurdles we're dealing with right now with it and trying to figure out how to manipulate it, but we do use the status in that field. We also use the permit issue date and the opening closing date fields, but our permit issue date and our opening date for that establishment are the same date. So it goes back to what I was explaining, that when we do the opening inspection, if everything's in compliance, they can open as soon as that inspection is completed.
Ideally, that's what in my opinion, that's what it should be, the same way you do it. But I realize you guys may have different rules and regulations from county to county, local ordinances possibly.
I think some of it's terminology as well. Like
Yeah.
we call our opening inspections, which gives people permission to open and operate, a final inspection. Prior to a final inspection, there might be one that's just called a pre-operational or preliminary inspection.
Right. Yeah. I know it as plan review myself.
I guess we can check if everybody uses that permit issue date. We probably look through the database and see how many has no value in there. I'm gonna grab my other computer. I had to grab my kid's computer again in this GoTo meeting because it kept on booting me off on my work computer.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So give me 1 second here. I'll make a note on that. What is that field called? Permit issue under permit information. I may also bring this up with John this afternoon, a little later this afternoon. See what his thoughts are on this also, just so that we can be consistent and these reports turn out the way that they're supposed to be.
This is Lisa with Winnebago. I was just interrupted by my director for a moment, but when we enter a facility into CDP, we don't necessarily even process the payment at that time.
Okay.
So until you actually process the payment and put a date in for the permit, you can kind of leave that in limbo. We tend to use a pending, but there's some drop downs to use so that you don't have anything going on other than the data entry beginnings for the new facility. So the permit date, as soon as we accept payment for a final inspection to get a permit, that's what goes on that permit, and that's when we basically call that our issue date, is when we put the dates on the permit for when it starts and ends.
So let me see. I don't know if I understood you 100%. Are you saying that when the payment is entered, like when they issue payment to you guys, does that finalize their, and I'm trying to use the wrong terminology here. So are they considered a legally opening? Go ahead.
Yeah, for us, when we go to enter the payment, or with the permit fee,
right,
to generate that dollar amount, that's where it asks for a start and end date for that permit.
Okay.
So I don't know if everybody's is the same, but that's where we kind of that's what we'll put in for our follow-up. Is we generally put 2 weeks to 4 weeks into the follow-up after that date.
Okay.
After we issue. And then our code is a little different. We took the 2017 FDA code, but we still have some things in our own code. And even if we process a permit and we don't issue it, our code does say that you are not okay to open until a permit is issued to you by the health officer.
Okay. Does anybody else have something like that? I'll take that as a no.
So we follow pretty much the same pattern that Lisa just explained. It's all in the process. So when we get a set of plans, we review the plans. There's no guarantee that establishment will ever get to the finished product. But as they get closer, then they'll submit an application. Just in that part, it's going to be different amongst different counties because they may charge a plan review fee. So they may require an application to be filled out as soon as the plans are submitted. McLean County doesn't charge a plan review fee.
Okay.
So once we get those plans in, we'll put them in a proposed status so that we don't lose track of them coming in, and we know that they're in the review phase. Then they'll come in and submit an application. They may pay at that time. They do not get their final opening inspection to bring food in and to serve to the public until we get paid.
Okay.
So we'll do follow-ups during the construction phase, but they don't get an opening inspection until they pay their fee. Once they pay the fee and they get their opening inspection, they can operate from that day on. But then the state requires us to do a follow-up on that, or what they call an opening inspection, because operational inspection. Because during the opening inspection, or whatever individual counties call it, we're just seeing the physical facilities. We're not seeing the process of food preparation going on at that time. So the state wants us to go back and do an operational inspection to assure that the handling procedures are safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I'm just trying to put it in terms that like the word was used earlier, the terminology that you guys use is different in Illinois than it is for North Carolina, and I'm very familiar with North Carolina, so I'm just trying to put them together. It seems like it's the same process, just different words. So,
yes.
So I guess for anybody else, I assume that the money factor is the main thing. Does anyone pay ahead before the permit? I'm sorry. Does anyone like pay with the application or before the permit, or do you? Here's how it is.
Sometimes.
Pardon me?
Sometimes.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. So yeah.
This is Lisa. We have people that try to pay, but we will not even issue them an application for the food and beverage permit until we've at least done a preliminary inspection.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So Lisa, what do you define as your preliminary inspection?
Our preliminary is after the plan review, when they have begun placing equipment, so that we can make sure that their layout matches their plan review.
So it's kind of a construction follow-up. If they're in the process of construction, you're making sure that everything is consistent with the blueprints.
Correct. And then we give them a laundry list of things they need to do in order for us to do the final or the opening inspection.
That would be your conditional permit or permit conditions, I guess.
Yeah, it's the conditions, and then when we are if we are comfortable with that, we will give them the food and beverage permit application. But as I said before, for us, whether you paid for it or not, it is not valid until it is physically issued to you, that permit.
Okay.
Trevor, the difficulty that McLean County has found in this process is if we don't switch that brand new establishment when we go out to do their opening inspection from proposed or pending to active, we can't pull up the inspection form. But
right.
On the other hand, if we make it active before the opening inspection and they're not ready to open, they kind of fall into the rest of the truly active establishments that are operating, and we lose track of them because it shows that they're active and it appears that we did an inspection already, which isn't the case.
I'm pretty sure for Peoria County we can see the pending ones as well, because that would be problematic based how you're describing it, because yeah, somebody's going to fall through the cracks.
I just want to see if we have that status on here. We do not.
Angie, have you noticed that that's changed for us on the mobile side?
Not that I've noticed.
Tim, are you there? He's not back. You know what? I think it'd probably be best if I get with John later this afternoon, when he gets back.
Yeah, I'm back, Trevor.
I just think we should.
It's just hard to find.
Yeah.
A common opening.
The process
everybody uses.
Right. The processes seem to be a little bit different in every county, even though some counties overlap and do the same process. I think if we talk with John when he gets back, maybe he'll come up with a solution and we can push that out and see what everybody thinks.
Yeah, we'll try to search through the database to see what column is mostly used by everybody. If it's like permit print date or issue date or payment date or a combination of a couple different columns, that we can find a commonality that works for everyone is the challenge.
Yep. And let me go back.
Would the sorry.
Go ahead.
Would the opening date, could that populate with a final inspection or operational inspection date?
Some counties don't use a final inspection. Everyone kind of has their own different inspection types. That's custom to their county process. Some have final, a lot of them don't. I mean, everyone has their routine. Yeah, that's the problem. Is not everyone has a final or opening or preliminary. I mean, everyone has their own different set of inspection types and meanings and.
Okay, I was just hoping that would work somehow, at least for those of us that do have that type of inspection, if that could actually populate that opening date where we have opening and closing that most of us aren't using.
And what inspection type do you use again for the opening and closing?
For Winnebago, we use a final inspection for opening. That's the one that everything is approved.
So when you do the final, then you have to go back into the establishment record and type in the opening date?
Actually, we put in a follow-up date, but I don't know if it always goes in here.
Okay, so you don't know if it...
We end up physically going in and putting in a date.
Okay, so you have to physically do it. Okay, you might want to make a note of...
It's not a routine.
Yeah, but that's kind of a good point that if you have inspection type that, you know, it's obviously called opening and once that inspection type is completed, it should go to the establishment record and automatically populate the opening date through like a trigger or something like that. Maybe that's like another thing to discuss with John Trevor.
Yeah.
See if these, you know, we can maybe start organizing all these different inspection types within the trigger to start populating these opening and closing dates.
All right, I made a note of that also. Okay. Actually, Tim, while I got you on the phone, let me go back to the one question we had about certifications, just to make sure, because I think I was going to talk with John about that. But now that you're here,
yeah, I know there's a story to do certification letters, and I know there was like the on-demand part that was fine, that you can sign a letter to like one certification. My question was, would there be a need for batch lettering for certification? An example I can think of is you would go to the reporting tab and type in the date range, and it would grab all the certifications that had an expiration date within that date range, and then it would generate a letter for each certification that was going to expire. Is that something that would be needed or not really? So if you had a bunch of food handlers that you thought might be expiring, you want to send them out a letter saying, hey, your certification that's expired, December 1st. Here's a letter, notifying you of this to get recertified.
if it's not batch,
I don't know if that would be on.
If it's not batch, it would just be individually, as far as like.
Yeah. So I was wondering, my question was, I'm not quite sure what type of letters were needed for certification. because I'm not in the field. If there would be a batch mode needed, like on the reporting tab, to send out like maybe like a mass mailing to all the certifications that got expired in June or July, or that you could run to the reports tab. I don't know if that would be needed or not, or not useful at all, or
Anybody have any suggestions? Thoughts? I guess we'll just defer to John on what he wants to do then, since
yeah, I mean, we can always just continue with
the way it is.
the on-demand lettering. Yeah, and if there is a need that comes up, we can always add that later.
Yep. Okay. All right, let me go back down to the agenda. I'll mark that up just as soon as we're done with this. I believe I got to the last one, and I know it's we're about 50 minutes into the call. Does anyone have anything else that they want to bring up as far as the food and lodging side before we go to the on-site piece of this? Okay, sounds like everybody's good to go with that. So if you're not using the on-site module, or I'm sorry, yeah, if you're not using it or whatever, feel free to drop off the call. If you have comments or anything, or if you just want to see what's going on, go ahead and stay on. I know that there's a couple documents that John Hendershot sent out that he wanted to go over, or us to go over on this call. So that being said, let me go ahead and pull those up. Okay, so just so you guys are aware, I have not been on any of the on-site CCB calls. I realized John Grady told me that there was a meeting that happened on June 24th with all of you guys, and the main thing that was discussed was something about the drawing piece of it. And then I received an email from John Hendershot along with, he actually sent it to, I guess, this whole group, and it was for these specific documents right here. I'm not sure. John, are you on the phone?
Yes.
Is this something that you guys were discussing internally between the group of Illinois users, or is this something that John Grady was discussing with all of you?
It's something that it's a document that I came up with.
Okay.
That we're kind of that was kind of my vision of how things should be, but it's I can't think of the right way to put it, but maybe the way that the inspection sheet gets built together. And then I added, the reason I put that in there is because I added some stuff to the bottom of that based upon our conversation from the June 24th meeting.
Okay.
And so it's one of those things that, like when you talk about the variance section, supervisor approval,
right.
We haven't been, in McLean County, we haven't been using the OSW system at all. So
Okay.
it's one of those things that I don't know what's there and what's not there. I've just been working on building the inspection sheets for like the different type of modules that might plug into an inspection sheet.
Okay.
And the reason that I sent that document that you've got up right now was because I added some stuff there. And then because the bottom thing there, we talked about there might be not a variance, but a maintenance section for cocoa filters because of the way that the maintenance that they're required. And then Carrie and I were talking, and another person was talking about whether or not we wanted to add in the permits that were after 2014 that have to have mandatory maintenance with IDPH rules if we wanted to put that in there. And then the other document that I sent out was a list of inspection checklist items that we still need, like the LPP, drip irrigation, Presby units, cocoa filters, whatever else is on that list.
I think I opened
Trevor,
two.
yeah, it's been the last group call. John Grady was included on it, and then it's basically a smaller group of the Illinois users that have been working on what John just explained to you.
Okay. Just real quick, so I'm kind of understanding. I'm pretty familiar with, like I said, all of my expertise comes from the North Carolina and working with them and going out in the field with them, doing inspections as far as for food and lodging, and learning all of their processes. I also spent 6 months with them, different counties doing the on-site piece, and in North Carolina, it's different from the coast to the mountain areas. So when you guys are when you say maintenance, does that mean the system is in the ground, and is it a specific type of system? Like you just said cocoa filters, or what was it called? I'm just trying to understand here.
Certain systems do require ongoing maintenance.
And do you charge for those maintenances? Okay.
No, there's the state requires that the homeowner do some type of maintenance, and there's a form that's available on the state website that they actually have to fill out, that they're supposed to fill out and keep for the life of their system and transfer to homeowner. And I don't think there's really been too much discussion about what different counties do to remind or require, or whatever it is that you want to call it, for the homeowners to do. And but the cocoa filters, like we don't have any in our county, but there's somebody has some, and the cocoa filter has to have, like, part of it needs to, like, I don't know if it's the coconut filter stuff has to be replaced once a year, and that's required by manufacturer. Otherwise, it doesn't work right.
Right. Okay. I gotcha. Okay.
Somebody can chime in on that.
I was confusing that with something else. I'm sorry. Go ahead, though.
I can't remember if we were putting something in there for tracking purposes or just to verify at the time of the inspection that they did have some type of maintenance contract or something. So I think that makes a difference in the development of the form.
Okay.
Or the system, I should say.
We kind of talked about whether or not we wanted to add that in, because it's kind of a homeowner requirement. I mean, we send out something every year in conjunction with Septic Smart Week. We send like 2 years ago, we sent out a postcard and got no responses. Last year, we sent out a trifold document and got maybe 10 responses out of 100 permits that we issued.
Wow.
So we're not getting a very good return on it, but it's one of those things. Look at that as we've been looking at from McLean County's point of view, is that's a homeowner requirement, and we're not going to go kicking down people's doors saying, hey, where's your paper for your 3-year maintenance or your 5-year maintenance or whatever it may be.
Right. Did they get a fine or anything if they don't do this? If it's state
technically, it's a violation of the code, but there's not really a fine associated with it.
So they're in violation, but there's no repercussion.
Basically.
Yeah, there's real teeth behind it unless we get a complaint or their system fails or something like that. And basically, then they just have to repair or fix it.
I see.
So it's basically to their benefit.
Right.
Yeah, the real penalty is that if they don't maintain it, then their system's not going to last as long as it normally would if they did maintain it. And then so they have to spend that extra. And so in 10 years, they have to spend $15,000 instead of 30 or 40.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so as far as adding some type of tracking of maintenance, you want to add that into this. Was there something else? When John mentioned he has his notes, but he did not send them to me before this meeting yesterday. We had talked yesterday briefly. he mentioned something about the drawing form or drawing in the system. Do you guys have any idea what I'm talking about?
That we want to make sure in Peoria, we are using the current well and septic
Okay.
inspection form and drawing tool.
Mhm.
And so I guess we would like to continue to have some sort of drawing tool.
Okay.
So it's not a separate process to scan and attach or something like that.
Right. Now, do you guys see that by like?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think that'll be kind of just like we were just talking about in the food stuff, that each county is going to probably do it a little bit differently. But there are counties who do use the drawing tool that's associated with the inspection sheet. And so we were actually trying to look to see if there was something else out there. But, even it's my understanding North Carolina they used to have something that was okay, but
Right.
then that's no longer supported. So it's not something that we could incorporate here in Illinois.
Right.
So it's one of those things that most people, or not most people, but there are users who want that there and need it for their systems.
Gotcha. Yeah, I believe John was looking into different systems, like see if there was any aftermarket systems out there that you guys could use. I know that that's pretty big here also in North Carolina. So the one system that they had was called Quit Plat Pro, and it was developed by a gentleman who's since passed away. The software works really, really well. However, the company is no longer in business. It basically draws everything to scale. You just put in the distances from whatever distribution box to the home, or you can say this one line is this long, and then it figures everything out to you to scale also. It's like a drag and drop onto the form. Then it prints it out into like a PNG image. It looks really nice and it's very clean, but software is no longer for sale. The couple counties that do have it have basically hacked it to on a thumb drive, basically, and there's no support for it whatsoever, and it only works on like Windows 7 machines. So, but anyway, there doesn't seem to be anything out there to replicate that. And that's why I was wondering if he was bringing that up to you guys, or if he was proposing something else. So,
I think that's basically what he said in the meeting, that there was the person that died that was no longer available, and there was no support for it. So
yeah,
and that it wasn't really viable for us.
Yeah, we've had several of our North Carolina users try to reach out to the family, and the family just doesn't want anything to do with it. They were going to buy the source code and give it to us, but none of that. None of that happened. So, okay. Go ahead.
This is Carrie. I have a question that I don't know if that would help people frame how we move forward with the development of this. I know not everybody currently uses the well and septic inspection form the current one, correct?
Correct.
Has everybody seen how that actually works and how inflexible it is, so that they can open their perspective and the parameters to what could be for the new form, and how flexible that can be designed? Where with the new form, we're currently working off basically the current form, we're basically working off of a crystal report, and the new form is basically like an app that you can click and add and enter, and then you would generate what that inspection form would look like, which would be specific to that specific property, situation, etc. Does that make sense?
It does to me. I'm not sure.
I just don't know if everybody. Sorry.
So, Carrie, this is Tom. Talking with John about this concept you guys have been working on. What you're trying to do is get a self-generating inspection report based upon the submitted application, correct?
Well, I know that you guys want some of the stuff pre-filled well, some of the stuff I would like pre-filled from the application, yes. Some of the other stuff, as long as it has the flexibility to alter it while they're doing their actual inspection or whenever they enter that actual, the as-built, if you will, into there, then I'm okay with everything from the application being transferred into that kind of a pre-filled section, if you will. But I think that the awesome thing about this new format is being able to have a lot more flexibility than what we have now.
Right. We can combine
so
a lot of things together.
It's not at that property, then it would not show up on the inspection form. Basically, each inspection would be custom built.
Yeah, that was our last conversation, and then you had said, Carrie, that you wanted to have that ability for the inspector to change it in the field if they needed to, and we're agreeable with that. And I don't know, what the repercussions for CDP is on that, but we're willing to agree with that.
Okay. I'm just making a note here, and I'll get with John, like I said, this afternoon on these other items, and I'll talk to him about that. Maybe he can give me his notes. I know I'm going to need to be added to the next. I guess. Well, actually, we're going to do it from here from now on, but I don't have any of his notes, unfortunately. John Evans. Okay. All right.
This is Tim. I'm been listening and I'm trying to understand. So, based on the application, once they go out in the field, it'll generate an inspection form based on the application. But once they get there, they might say, "Well, this is wrong on the application, so this inspection won't work anymore." And so they want to be able to change it, basically the application there, so they get the right inspection form to generate. So it needs to be something dynamic where they can change the inspection form that would go back and change the application.
I would think that it would be like, let's say the application. Let's say they're going to do like a. Carrie, is that by? Do you inspect? Do you have different forms for different systems, or one form for one system?
Well, currently it's just one generic, like crystal report.
Right.
That is supposed to be one size fits all. That does not. I guess the way this form is being kind of envisioned is similar to the food form. You click different things behind the scenes.
Right.
And then whatever is clicked or typed or entered would then generate into the report and be, it would be specific to that property, that situation, that.
Okay.
Just.
During that initial inspection, would that be based off the application at first, or what is the?
Yeah, it would be based off the application, and I guess for us here, I don't know what all pulls and gets into that inspection from the application, other than just kind of some basic information.
Yeah, right now it's pretty generic, and it's the same for everything, I believe.
Property and.
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand, like, the envision for the new system is to maybe build an inspection based off of what was selected in the application, and then you would have your inspection, but you still want the ability to change that inspection around in case the application was filled out wrong.
Or your proposed
stuff
is rarely as your as-built is. So you might have 3 lines proposed at 50 feet, and then you get out there and they had to make one at 45 and one at 55 and one at 50. So you need to be able to be flexible in adding the information to that system, or how many inches of cover might be over that tank.
Right.
I
Right.
think most of us can agree that what contractors propose and what actually goes in is rarely a cookie cutter identical match to
Right.
what.
Okay.
So Tim, for just maybe if you understand the North Carolina version, it's like the IP and the CA versus the OP. The IP and the CA, the IP is issued first. That's your improvement permit, and then once that's issued, they do a soil evaluation first to see if they can put anything in the ground if the soil is fine. Once that's done, they give them the IP saying that they have permission to build something on there. Then once they find a contractor, they start putting something in the ground, that they get a CA, which is a construction authorization. When that is completed, the EHS goes out there and inspects it to make sure everything is looks like what it's supposed to look like. And once it is, that's what the OP, the operational permit, is actually. I think that's your as-built is what they call it. That's when that is issued. So it's those are the three different phases, the way I understand it. It sounds pretty.
So then, does that I'm just trying to think, because also one of the issues we have is if we have a system that might have multiple inspections,
right,
or more so on the well side of it, but like once that inspection is generated, you would have to create another inspection to add different information to it, perhaps. It's not very fluid.
Right.
And then it would stick to the inspector that started it type of thing. So it can't be like, oh, well, so-and-so started it, now somebody else can finish it unless they were to bring or use their equipment.
You're talking about like the actual person building the actual system. Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking of like multi-phase inspections and how to capture those. If most of that is within a day or so, so it's just not uploaded or finaled, if you will, in the computer.
It's done, yeah.
So.
I can propose stuff. I can propose some things to you, but I'd rather run it by John first so that I don't mention some things that he may not want in there yet. So, I think I know where he's going with this, though. But yeah, as far as what you were just saying, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Does your North Carolina clients, are they using the My App for the well and septics yet?
Not yet. They're still being built at this point. They're going to go live with all of the food and lodging. They have like an expanded version of food and lodging than what you guys have. They have roughly 36 forms on the food and lodging side that have been condensed into like 5 forms. And once that is completed, and I believe that side of things is going to be done in September, the first week of September, then we're going to focus on all the on-site piece to that. And we've got some preliminary stuff going with that already. And that should be ready by the end of the year. So that's what we're hoping to push out for the on-site piece. But yeah. Has John showed you anything? Like, has he presented any kind of screenshots or anything for this app?
Not for the well and septic.
Okay.
I'm
not sure if he's got those built.
Some of us are already using it for food.
Okay. Yeah, I knew a few of you guys were using it for the food and lodging, or the food, I should say. Let me get with John, see if he wants to get some screenshots or if he wants me to grab some. Shots of OSW. Yeah. Okay.
Carrie, when you were talking about the changes in systems, when a person goes out and does an inspection, I thought that you were talking about like if you would go out there and say that the permit had proposed a septic tank and say a gravel seepage field, and then when you would get out there, your sanitarian would find a septic tank and maybe a seepage bed as opposed to a field or a serial distribution system or something like that.
That can happen.
Yeah. But I think that if they proposed a line to be 80 feet long and they had to change it a little bit, I don't think that would change the inspection sheet per se.
We just
at least the kind that I've kind of constructed.
We would just give you the ability to make the change on the actual. I'm going to use your verbiage, as built. In other words, it may have been given to you as like 100 feet long, whatever. But when you actually go there and do the inspection, say it goes down to 80 feet, then you would have the ability to mark in there 80 feet. Now, I don't think that would change the system, but you would definitely be
on
able
that
to
other example.
But if the system, so the way that I have been developing the inspection sheets, you have a gravel distribution system, and that has its own sheet where, as a requirements in the code for the serial distribution, and then a gravel bed is even different. That would be a different inspection sheet than that. So when you got out into the field, if they didn't install a field with 3 foot wide lines, that they installed a bed, then they would need a different type of inspection sheet for that.
Right. So the way that would
But
work.
then that's going to have separate inspection sheets as opposed to like click boxes under secondary treatment. If you clicked like seepage bed, some different fields, some branching logic perhaps would pop up to fill out for a seepage bed as opposed to a mound system or seepage field, or possibly depending on the type of seepage field, if they're using a special material rather than just like chamber or gravel, then there might be information that can be added for that. I think if it's all tied to the application side of it, then at least for us, I would feel like we're at the mercy of what our clerical staff are entering in, because they do the data entry. And I'm not sure that would be the ideal thing for my inspectors.
So the way I'm envisioning this myself, just based on what I've seen in North Carolina and what you guys have discussed here. So all of these different forms. Let's say you have a form for, like you said, a mound versus a bed or whatever. If you had separate forms, we would build those into this application. You would not see them until something triggered that form to show. Does that make sense? Like there would be some flag set on the form itself, whether it's the type of system, whether it's the a checkbox that says change system or whatever. Once you would select that, there would be logic to pull up or open up that specific form or make it available to you, basically. Hopefully that makes sense. So pretty much all of the different.
As long as the end result allows for flexibility, even if it's adding multiple tanks or having 2 separate systems, perhaps, which would be rare, but it
Right.
just needs to be a lot more flexible than the form that we currently have, which is not flexible at all.
Right. Yeah. I think the best thing to do is for me to get with John and come up with some screenshots or some images for you guys, so you can actually see what we're proposing. It'll become a lot more clear. The forms that I see, like here on the mobile system, these are minimal compared to what we use in North Carolina. Like this is just the demographic data right here. There's not a whole lot of data collected. I mean, this is just minimal to me. And then the drawings.
Yeah, that's too stagnant.
There's on some of these as-built, we call it a OP, operational permit. They're 3 pages long, but it's filled with data from every different piece. And again, it's going to look a lot different in the app versus what you're looking at here. So I could probably pull it up in a designer view so you can just see kind of some of the data that we do collect. We'll do, that's a short one. Western OP. So you can see this is what this would be their as-built. This is what's actually in the ground. They're permitting it. It's the last thing they do, depending on the system type. They may get inspected if it's a type 3G or something like that later on in the future. So you have this information here. You have your information about your drain field. All of it's changeable. All of this is pre-populated based on what was originally filled out, but it gives you the chance to change anything. You go to page 2. It's cut up into this section. Whoops. You have your septic tank section here, your pump tank, then your supply lines.
So if a lot of that is pre-populated for them, do they ever have issues with their inspectors not necessarily checking or being as thorough since they don't have to think and fill in a box?
No, it all comes down to training. To be honest with you, it comes down to the training of the EHS to know, I don't know if when you guys become EHSs, do you actually go to like a school for that, or you just become an EHS after you take a test?
So environmental health specialist is one of our job titles.
Right.
If somebody's taken their environmental health practitioner's test, then they get the title of environmental health practitioner.
Okay. So in North Carolina, they go off, once they're hired by the health department, they go off to training for their first time to get authorized. And let's say it's either food and lodging or the on-site piece right here. And they're there for about 6 to 8 weeks straight. It's kind of like a boot camp for 8 weeks. And they learn about all of the stuff and how they kind of like standardize how they do these systems and how they permit these systems. So, it comes down to the training, and then it comes down to the workflow process for the actual health departments. But all of these forms were built with user, user feedback. All of this stuff right here was built, by what they wanted. So, yeah, and then all the legal verbiage, all that stuff.
In Illinois, then.
Pardon me?
I said they're a lot better than Illinois then if they actually have a process for standardization. But I would say the human factor is still there, that if,
yes.
This is filled in, it's easily to overlook that I didn't take this measurement or double check this or do that type of thing.
Don't get me wrong, it does happen. Don't get me wrong, there is a human factor into that. But it is minimized greatly. And I use the word standardized a little loosely. We have kind of standardized it for them. We at CDP. There's basically 2 forms. You saw this one was called a Western. That's the western half of the state. Then there's an Eastern, which is basically from the Piedmont area all the way to the coast. Since the soils are so different, that they had to have 2 different forms. So that's how we work that out. So that being said, we're gonna incorporate a lot of this type of logic into the new on-site stuff for you guys. All right, so let me make a quick note real quick. Give John on that one, and then the next call is that date there. All right, so that pretty much, we're coming up to the last 5 minutes. Do you guys have any other questions or something else you want me to bring up to John and before the next call? I'll take that as a
Not
no.
that I can think of.
Okay. Well, I will get the answers from John once he returns today on some of these things that I have marked, and I'll send out an updated email to everyone with the answers, and we will go from there. So I appreciate your time, and
All right.
talk to you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.